Black Ops 2 is the greatest Call of Duty ever made. It says it in the title because I believe it, and any studios working on Call of Duty in the future will need to create magic and capture lightning in a bottle once again if they ever hope to knock off Black Ops 2 from its perch as the greatest of all time. I know that there's probably a dozen other videos like this one, and for good reason, but Black Ops 2 isn't just successful because on its own it's a fantastic game. There's a lot that goes into it, and today I want to talk about everything. Call of Duty as a whole, starting with COD 4 Modern Warfare, began its meteoric ascent from being a sort of popular game series about famous World War II battles to being a multimedia monster worth billions of dollars. When Modern Warfare released in 2008, everybody had finally bought their Xbox 360 or their PS3 and had owned them for a little while now. The world of online gaming was also rapidly changing, and seemingly by the day there was something new and creative going on. Long gone were the days of local co-op, split screening with your friends, and was replaced by the ability to play with anyone anywhere in the world at any time of the day. This was a golden age of gaming, with not just Call of Duty but other series like Mass Effect, Grand Theft Auto, Halo, and Fallout releasing some of their best titles in this little couple of year period. Like I said earlier though, bigger than any of them grew Call of Duty, and when Modern Warfare began to get stale, instead of waiting 2 to 3 years for a new one, another game was around the corner 12 months after the last one with World at War, which birthed the Zombies mode and, as was typical at the time, stepped up the bar for what a Call of Duty campaign could be. Then immediately after that comes arguably another contender for the greatest Call of Duty ever made in Modern Warfare 2. Everyone and their mother was hearing about Call of Duty at this point, and with the rise of COD, we also saw a paralleled rise to fame of YouTube videos. These two platforms actually really helped shape each other in the early years, and in many ways they still do today. Good players can now upload their gameplay and thoughts and opinions about their favorite game, and with YouTube's explosive audience growth around that time, that meant more eyes on gameplay and more, eyes on Call of Duty and vice versa. Then when Modern Warfare 2 released in 2009, your favorite YouTubers probably watched or released their favorite videos, forever changing the future of online entertainment. Everyone from PewDiePie to Mr. Beast started in Call of Duty around this time period, which is actually pretty crazy. But Modern Warfare 2 on its own was fantastic, and after that, another banger came out 12 months later in Black Ops 1, continuing the streak of them. Modern Warfare 2 was fantastic on its own, and after that, another banger came out in Black Ops 1, continuing the streak. It furthered the Zombies mode, created a new iconic campaign, and had a fantastic multiplayer. In 2011, Modern Warfare 3 released, and as much as it may be forgotten now, Modern Warfare 3 was and still is the second best-selling Call of Duty ever made. Black Ops 1 only beats it out by a few thousand copies. And once Modern Warfare 3 is finished, take a second to imagine that you're Activision. You've just released banger titles for 5 years in a row, and just had your biggest sales triumphs in back-to-back years. Treyarch is coming up on their next game, and this will definitely be your last game that is exclusive to the current generation consoles. You can play it safe and have another game with decent success, or you try something new. You decide to go out with a bang. In a very logical decision, you want to continue the story started in the first Black Ops game, but you also need to bring things into the 21st century because the Modern Warfare games were so successful with that, and World War II era games are getting stale around this time. Your solution is to have your campaign's centerpiece be a split story between the 1980s during the Cold War and the near future of 2025. To bridge the gap between the old and the new, you're using well-known and loved characters like Mason and Woods who can tell a story about the past to help take down an enemy in the present. And this campaign, they play all the hits, so to speak, with some cool next generation technology on display, lots of explosives, and those characters I mentioned like Woods, Mason, and Hudson all making their presence very well known. Each of them plays big parts, and overall, it's a good Call of Duty campaign that serves as a great way to introduce us to this new world of warfare in the most logical way possible, honestly. There There's some iconic moments with the main character Raul Menendez and his younger sister that are really some of the best individual moments in any Call of Duty campaign, to be honest with you. They're genuinely beautiful. But admittedly, I'm not much of a campaign buff myself, with me having not played any of them since Infinite Warfare, because I'm mostly focused on my bread and butter of the zombies mode these days. But I can still admit that Black Ops 2's campaign was really quite good, and what this world building and campaign level design is also great for is building multiplayer maps and getting your players familiar with all of the guns and equipments at their disposal. And oh boy, Black Ops 2 just has so many good ones. I actually just love BO2 so much. Black Ops 2's multiplayer is iconic, and that's not really up for debate here. With the introduction of the Pick 10 system to Call of Duty, which is still around in an altered form today, players were allowed to play pretty much any way they really wanted to. If you were someone who wanted to play like a little bitch with no friends, then you'll use a target finder LSAT and the overkill perk to have a riot shield either on your back or placed down in front of you. If you're a player that was all about running and gunning, then an MSMC class with lightweight and C4 was super easy and quick for you to make. Every single sniper rifle was viable in some way, with the best being the DSR before Vonderhaar nerfed it and crushed my dreams. Hell, even if you wanted to play with just using pistols to unlock your diamond camo, then there was ways to build yourself a good loadout so that it wasn't just a slog to get through because there's no chance of killing other players. The absolute glory of Black Ops 2's weapons and perk systems is that every single thing in there has some sort of use and can be used to go on big kill streaks if you have enough skill and put enough thought into your loadout. There is truly nothing that is actually just outright bad and unusable. That's why Modern Warfare 2 was so much fun for people, because fundamentally, if everything is overpowered, then really nothing is. And for the 99.99999% of players who are only getting on for a couple hours a day after school or when they get home from work, being able to find your one fun gun and actually being able to stay mostly competitive with the other team is masterful. These days, there's so much emphasis on gun balance, progression, skill curves, and all sorts of shit. But in Black Ops 2 in 2012, we didn't need to worry about that, because back then, gaming itself was just more of a casual experience. People were just getting on to enjoy themselves and not hunting on Reddit for what's the best meta after patch 1.17 on the newest game. That's also why back in the day, there was no need for skill-based matchmaking, because only a small fraction of players took it seriously enough to do anything more than aim and shoot whatever gun happened to look cool or they unlocked first. There's even that infamous in-game message for Black Ops 2 that basically says to go shit on all of the Christmas noobs, because they understood at the time that there was a clear skill gap between players in games, but there wasn't good enough players and there wasn't a lot of them, so it didn't really cause a true disruption. Man, I haven't even gotten into the maps, kill streaks, league play, camos, or microtransactions just for multiplayer yet, let alone zombies. So because there are 15 launch maps for multiplayer, if you include Nuketown, I'm only going to go over a few of my favorites to highlight here. With that said, look at this list of some of the launch maps and tell me which one of them isn't absolutely iconic today besides Drone. Hijacked is such a simple concept with two commando teams dueling it out on a private yacht in the middle of the ocean. It's your traditional 3-lane design with an extra middle lane underneath the deck of the yacht. Going down there is a risky play because you could always run into another player trying to do the same thing as you, but when you end up making it through and being the person to sneak up behind the opposing players, it feels so satisfying. In general on Hijacked, almost everything could be wallbanged, which is amazing because it should be. Half the map is thin walls or pieces of wood, to be honest, but also because there's a lot of sight lines to watch and places to hide, so you having FMJ bullets on for extra wall penetration ended up paying off many times, which is just good game design. It's also a very close quarters map, which always meant that some dickhead was running around with a Remington shotgun and hiding inside a building, but you know, what can you really do? Then there's Standoff, which is a more complicated map than Hijacked, with longer sight lines, more lanes to run through, and required a bit more understanding understanding of where people were going to spawn. Despite that though, it never really felt daunting or like you couldn't ever have a fair game against a squad that was slightly better than you were. As long as you didn't bring an SMG to an LMG fight, then you'd be fine for the most part. Raid is Raid, I don't really need to say much more about that. Everyone loves Raid because again, 3 main lanes to fight through, lots of wall bangs, and logical map layouts. There was always a way to sneak around or outplay someone, whether it be by blowing up a car near them, sneaking through the water area, hiding behind the red statue, or any number of other things. Raid catered to a fast-paced playstyle if you wanted to take it, but also left enough long sightlines that slower-paced players could have their fun as well. Drone is actually an interesting map though, because it did have a simple 3-lane structure, but actually was more vertical than the other ones so far. The helipad platform and second story windows were actually fairly annoying at times, I will give it that, with slow LMG players dominating them and it being almost impossible to unseat them, it felt like. Drone was skipped a lot of the time when picking maps from what I remember back in the day. Oh yeah, shout out to the map voting system, I love that so much, and the fact that every COD doesn't have it is a shame. But overall, Drone was a serviceable map, but I don't think it was a very good one, and there probably could have been a better one to throw in there as a launch map. Aftermath is basically Drone, but turned up to 11 because it has ladders to climb and more buildings with more floors to hide in the back of if you're a pussy. Then finally, we've got Nuketown 2025, which I mean, come on, it's Nuketown. You may think you're tired of Nuketown, but you aren't. Especially back in 2012, this was super nice because the idea hadn't been played into the ground yet, and every few weekends, Treyarch would drop in a Nuketown 24/7 playlist with a hint of double XP. Everybody remembers spending their Saturday playing that Nuketown 24/7 playlist and trying to not get kill confirmed because that's less XP for the squad. No one wants kill confirmed. Domination, hardpoint, demolition, and capture the flag is where the real fun was had. You and the boys shitting on another team was just great. And in general, loading up a 6-man squad of friends and dominating another team like 250 to 47 in hardpoint while dropping 50 plus kills each is just an unmatched feeling. Even getting another 6-man squad to all quit out because they're getting beaten still gives me the tingles in a way that most games really haven't been able to since Black Ops 2 was popular. And speaking of the ability to shit on people, how about them score streaks, fam? I love the Black Ops 2 streaks were built around score rather than just kills for the first time. Because there's so much that a player can do to contribute to a win rather than just getting kills, and Black Ops 2 really feels like it rewards that. If you're someone playing the objective and you captured a flag on domination, there's your 200 score, that feels really good. Throwing an EMP to destroy an enemy sentry gun gains you 150 towards your score streak. Flashbang the player that your teammate then kills gives you 50, and then so on. You could realistically get a UAV or better without getting any kills if you played tactically enough and contributed to the team effort. Granted, EMPs were super overpowered, but let's not talk about that because I ran EMPs like everybody else did. But when you did get those score streaks, it was usually worth it because especially the ones that costed 800 plus points to get were all bangers. Literally the only mostly useless score streak above 800 points is the AGR drone, and that's because 2 C4s or 1 EMP thrown at it would destroy the whole thing right away. Other than that one dud though, you've got the Warthog, Swarm, Attack Dogs, VTOL Warship, Orbital VSAT, and Stealth Chopper, and those things will absolutely fuck up the other team's existence. I've always been a big believer that if you survive long enough to earn high cost streaks, then they should be good. You should be able to slide your balls across the other team's face because you earn the right to do that. Balance be damned, it was fun to use the score streaks in that game, and we all took our punishments or left when the other people got them because you knew you were going to keep dying. I would also like to give a shout out to the Black Ops 2 microtransactions for not being scummy as hell. There were only a few camos on sale at the time, but when you bought a camo for only $2, then it would go on any gun. Not like today where $20 Mastercrafts only work on one gun with certain attachments. These were good microtransactions, and I happily spent my mom's credit card money on the bacon camo. But lastly, for multiplayer, I want to talk about League play. I love League play just so much, probably more than any other person really should, because it was just a stupid amount of fun. Back in the summer of 2014, I spent my entire summer waking up to hop on early on League play with my full party of friends to dominate the master rank leaders, and that was just Oh, it's so fucking fun. At the time, there were still other squads to actually play against, so you always ran into them once in a while. Nice 6v6 action, just ooh, it felt so nice. And new seasons were always fun as well, because around that time, a few thousand people were always on League Play, and when doing placement games, sometimes it would match us with people who were supposed to be in silver or gold, and that went exactly how you think it would. My best placement ever was Master Rank 3, I believe, because my other two friends played more hours than I did, and because of that, they ended up a few hundred points on top of me on the leaderboard, but still, it was the best time ever. And that's another thing, Black Ops 2's League Play was actually insanely balanced, and very rarely did I get an outright unfair matchup after you were placed in your rankings for the season. And even though I didn't play the game much in its prime on League Play, I would assume that with a bigger pool of players, the balancing would have been even better at that point. It's truly a shame no one actually plays it anymore, and the seasons were discontinued years ago due to dwindling players. I actually remember that day because I got on wanting to play League and it was discontinued, and I just felt so sad. Overall, Black Ops 2 multiplayer is just as good as everyone says. There's lots of reasons why Reddit and Twitter always complain and ask for them to bring back old systems, and it's honestly because, damn it, they were really fucking good. Every part of the community was firing on all cylinders at this time. Content creators were getting better views than ever before because Black Ops 2 was a massive hit, casuals were happy with multiplayer, the campaign fans were happy, and then we had zombies, which isn't so black and white. Yeah, this is the time where we have to address the elephant in the room, and that is the early stages of Black Ops 2 Zombies. As mentioned before, zombies only really came into existence at the later stages of World of War's development, with it only really getting approved because it was fun to have at the end of the campaign. When it almost by accident became a smash hit, those developers who helped create it were suddenly having to figure out how to create more of this mode while continuing their regular jobs as level designers or artists on other parts of Call of Duty. During Black Ops 1, things ramped up a bit with zombies receiving more time and a higher budget than it had in World of War, but they still really had their struggles, and zombies was still a fledgling side project that could have flopped at any time, so it didn't have exclusively dedicated employees for it yet. But when Black Ops 1 zombies took off and performed insanely well, a semi-official team was finally formed with most of the people who had contributed so far, and the person chose to lead that group was Jimmy Zielinski. Obviously, any project is a collaborative effort, and going into Black Ops 2, Jimmy Zielinski and the team wanted to really make something incredible. Transit is now infamous for being a map that was disappointing and frustrating to many hardcore players in the zombies community, but it was never designed that way at the beginning. When it began development, Transit was designed to be a much larger map with 2 different bus routes, more locations to stop at, a bigger main quest Easter egg, more modes, and extra survival maps. The zombies team was shooting for the moon on that one, no pun intended, but as development came along and the team slowly realized that the PlayStation 3 could not handle their ambition, they slowly began to strip back part of the experience. Getting Transit to run at a stable 60 FPS on any console became the important issue, and by the time that they were finished doing that, we were left with what we see today. There were also time constraints, so some of it wouldn't have been finished regardless of the stability. To be honest, I think that the vision was just too big overall from the beginning. All in all though, it's incredibly difficult for me to judge Transit as it should have been, how it is, and how each section of the player base really interacted with it. Jimmy Zielinski and the team at this time did as best as they could, but it really is still inexcusable that a launch zombies map looks and plays the way the Transit actually does. But playing devil's advocate, with that said, Green Run as a whole is absolutely loved by the wider Call of Duty player base, including a younger version of me. As I said earlier, most people back in 2012 didn't judge games the way that they do nowadays, and when Black Ops 2 released, Transit was actually beloved by a huge portion of players. It was something different, but felt grounded enough, unlike a map such as Moon, where, you could figure it out a little bit and survive for a little while, but you weren't really going to get very far. Black Ops 1 started to ramp up the difficulty curve and the amount of things that you need to do to fully set up your game, and a lot of players didn't actually really like that. But with Transit, it felt stripped back a little bit. The bus got you to the important areas, it kept you safe, and then when it stopped off, you ran to go grab a perk or a gun at the little areas, and then ran back into the bus for safety. Many people played it that way while never adventuring into the fog, and it was genuinely a lot of fun for those people. I remember playing public matches and people fucking loved Transit. Even for the players who didn't enjoy it, there was always the survival maps to go on. Bus Depot was there to challenge you, farm allowed perks in the mystery box without making you overpowered, and town was as casual fun as zombies really gets. No thought had to be put into your setup, and its lava pits added a layer of difficulty that could be overcome by skill and good timing by working together, or if you wanted to camp in one of town's many corners, then you definitely could. Sitting in the top of the bar with an entire team on Transit is just one of those memories that I think if you've ever played Black Ops 2 Zombies, you probably got at least one of them. So it's easy to look back now and see how flawed Transit actually was, but in its prime, that map and Green Run as a whole was loved by the fans. But I can't really say as much for what happened next though with the release of Die Rise. Black Ops 2 was truly a period of trial and error because every map felt ambitious and like Treyarch was always trying to push the boundaries of what was possible, but it didn't always stick. Die Rise is a vertical hellscape that really ended up being more frustrating than fun. There were countless areas to fall off of the map or get squished by an elevator or even just getting lost in the buildings because there's so many similar looking hallways to walk through. Die Rise was not for everyone, and while it does have a cult following to it, I would say many people played it for a few days and barely ever touched it again after that, despite there also being some good things about it. The storyline was advancing along nicely, and it's a gorgeous map that makes you believe there's an actual outside world to what's happening within the map. I remember spending dozens of hours walking around Die Rise, shooting random things, finding tiny bits of paper, and listening to radios about a group called The Flesh. And 13-year-old me sat there thinking, man, I could really uncover some secret that no one had found yet, and I'm gonna crack the story wide open. But just like Transit, you could really see where Treyarch was trying to go with the map, but yeah, it didn't really come together and it wasn't very super replayable. And then something weird happened, and I don't think we're ever really going to know the full story about this because after Die Rise released as the first of the 4 regularly scheduled DLC packs, the Zombies lead Jimmy Zielinski, as I talked about earlier, was either fired or left Treyarch. No one really knows what happened here, but this now meant for the first time ever, Zombies needed a new creative lead to guide the project through its last 3 maps of the year at the least. This is where we see the introduction of a very familiar face to Zombies fans and the man who would eventually become a co-studio lead at Treyarch, Jason Blundell. His creative vision for Zombies was not the same as Jimmy. In the early years of Zombies, there was a large emphasis made on gameplay over the story, and as time moved along with the Easter egg main quest becoming more popular, that did shift a bit. But Jimmy's maps, at least on the surface, felt really gameplay focused, to be honest with you. When Jason Blundell took over, he and the Zombies team decided on a complete tonal shift over to a narrative-driven experience with gameplay being a product of whatever came from that. With that philosophy in mind, the team got hard to work on Mob of the Dead, a new map with a new crew set in a completely different universe to the rest of Black Ops 2 so far. Your characters are 4 mobsters trapped in Alcatraz that are stuck in an infinite cycle of living, trying to escape Alcatraz, and dying to the warden on New Year's Eve 1933. There are actually 2 different endings to this map, the first being that 3 of the mobsters kill Albert Arlington and their suffering continues as the cycle moves on. The other ending is that Arlington kills all 3 of them and their cycle of suffering is broken. We won't actually know what this meant for years to come, but nonetheless, this was an absolutely mind-blowing experience for us back in mid-2013. Granted, all Black Ops 2 Zombies maps beside Origins had multiple endings, but those were just changes in exposition and one step changing really. But with Mob of the Dead, it really gives you a moral decision and your characters actually try to talk you into one decision or the other and influence what's going on. In my opinion, this map's storytelling is an absolute masterstroke in how to write a brilliant open-ended story with such a limiting gameplay loop like there is in Zombies. Mob of the Dead is a gorgeous map that truly truly feels alive in some parts, with little touches here and there that complete it as an incredible experience. Although, admittedly, I can't say it's the most fun map to play after round 30. Because of its structure and attention to details, Mob of the Dead doesn't really have very many areas to train up hordes of zombies very well, and those that do exist are challenging but rewarding. I would have personally liked to have had the hallways be a bit wider because there's a lot of bullshit downs that happen in this map due to things like that, and it really frustrates me at times, but Treyarch does make up for that. Because the afterlife mechanic they use to open up the map also serves as your unlimited quick revives essentially. You can have literally 100 downs in a game as long as at some point you got a new afterlife for getting through a round, up to having 3 of them at any given time. But overall, as someone who enjoys high rounds like getting to round 100, even after getting past round 40 on Mob of the Dead, it began to drastically slow down more than other maps because nothing besides the Hell's Redeemer or traps can kill anything anymore. I still love Mob of the Dead a lot though, and I have a lot of strong memories with it from the summer that it released. Because Mob of the Dead was such a departure from everything that we had seen so far, we kind of had to tie up some loose ends with the characters that we had played thus far in the game. That's where the Zombies team came up with the idea of Buried, an old western map seemingly ripped out of time and placed into an Angolan iron mine. This town is haunted by ghosts in a mansion and is also home to a giant man who speaks no English. But he enjoys alcohol and candy, just like my uncle. But now this map really, I would say, is pretty universally beloved and really got the whole semi-open sandbox portion of Black Ops 2 Zombies very correct. There was like 6 or 7 different buildable items to mess around with that range from a sonic resonator that acts as a miniature thunder gun to a chainsaw mounted on the wall that cuts up zombies as they walk by. There was a lot of cool shit to build, and that's just the buildables. In the mystery box itself, you could find the paralyzer, which lets you fucking fly around, which at the time was like, holy shit, I didn't know that flying was possible. I love this. There's also the time bomb to rewind rounds, and it was the ultimate troll when your friend got the ray gun and you wanted to mess around with them. Speaking of ray gun though, this is where the ray gun Mark II was introduced to zombies finally. A powerful, more precise version of the ray gun that with good aim could kill zombies up to round 60, making it the 3rd most powerful gun in the game behind the Slickofire from Die Rise and Buried's own Paralyzer. What was also cool is that if you bought Buried, it would be added to every map's mystery box, making much higher rounds on maps like Transit and Town possible for players who aren't looking to deal with the fucking jet gun. This is also the wrap up to the Transit crew's story, with you either siding with Dr. Maxis and expelling Richtofen from the ether while saving Samantha, or you side with Richtofen where he kills Maxis and takes control of the entire universe, ending that storyline entirely. Technically either one ends the storyline entirely, but you get my point. This did feel like a nice way to end things off in one map and really put a nice bow on the story while Treyarch steps in a new direction going forward with DLC 4. And very quickly before I end off Buried, it's a gorgeous map and I absolutely love the music. Seriously, like Buried is just it's so aesthetically pleasing. Then last but never least, Treyarch on August 27th, 2013 released arguably one of the greatest zombies maps ever created. Origins right away hits you with the always iconic Shepherd of Fire intro of our 4 original characters inside a new universe finally meeting each other because each person's respective military tasked them with hunting down Edward Richtofen. This crew is the one that would go on to become icons over the next few years and really evolve zombies from being a round-based wave experience padded out with funny one-off voice lines made by characters who were stereotypes, and Origins took that step, opened the door, and made them become actual people with feelings and motivations. Your main quest Easter egg is you following the Vorkuta steps from the Black Ops 1 campaign mission. Step 1. Secure the keys by building the staff, getting the G-Strike grenades, and obtaining the Iron Fist. Step 2. Ascend from darkness by upgrading those staffs and placing them inside of the robots. Step 3. Rain fire with your G-Strike on the pad next to stamina up. Step 4. Unleash the Horde, which happens when all of the panzers spawn out after you open that pad. Step 5. Secure the Winged Beast when shooting down a plane only visible in zombie blood. Step 6. Wield a Fist of Iron when you upgrade your fist in the excavation site. Step 7. Raise hell by entering the crazy place and killing 100 zombies. And then Step 8. Freedom, where you send the Maxis drone into Agartha, setting Samantha free. literally iconic, and it still gives me chills to this day because you already are using the beloved Workuta steps, and now turn them into an Easter egg quest is just chef's kiss levels of excellent. Not only is it just a good idea, but it's fun and challenging as well. It requires you and your team work together, and everyone needs to play their role like you would need to do if this was really happening and trying to save someone. Admittedly though, Origins does have a big barrier for entry though, and there is a lot to actually learn about it. I didn't even like the map very much on release and didn't upgrade to staff until mid 2014. But eventually once I did bother to learn, and the memories that I had made once I did that will never leave me. From an atmospheric standpoint, the music, the map design, and the dynamic weather, Origins really did it all and hit a grand slam in pretty much every way. Besides the Easter egg ending, I remember people were pissed about that because the zombie storyline apparently being a child's game for a few years until we realized it wasn't, really didn't sit well with people. Either way, Origins was an excellent way to end off Black Ops 2 and really gave the zombies community loyalists a lot of hype going into the future, and oh boy, we had another golden age in front of us. Even though this year started off on a rough patch for zombies, with this game now having two different directing and gameplay styles packed into one, it really feels like it gives you the most authentic zombies experience to date. Never before have we had such excellence combined with maps that should have been excellence and stumbled in some kind of way. You can literally feel the difference in the mode between Die Rise and Mob of the Dead, which is so strange, but in a good kind of way. Because here's a hot take for you, both Jason Blundell and Jimmy Zielinski were good at what they did. Black Ops 2 and video games in general are art. Their value isn't based off of how good their graphics are or how many features can be packed into it. What makes video games good is their value to you personally at that moment in your life. It's about how they make you feel, and the joy, sadness, anger, frustration, thought-provoking moments, and every other emotion that they make you feel. Black Ops 2 is a perfect example of a game that on its own, released at any time, would be excellent. But as I said in the beginning, it came out at the perfect time and made it an all-time great. Life back then was simpler for many of us. All we had to worry about was what we were wearing to school tomorrow, and if your friend was going to be able to get online because his mom grounded him from the Xbox. 2012 and 2013 was before social media totally took over the world, before pandemics, and before life really just got complicated. Black Ops 2 was the end of an era for the Xbox 360 and PS3 console generation, and honestly, it was an end of an era for us. Things only got more complicated from there on in our lives, with many of us either in college or working full-time jobs and starting families now. Call of Duty also got more complicated, with Ghost being on a fancy new console with cutting-edge graphics and lots of fancy features that honestly began to not feel like what Call of Duty used to be. That doesn't mean it's bad, it just doesn't have the emotional connection that I have with those older games because it wasn't at that right moment in my life. And to me, that's everything. So for my money, I think Call of Duty and the generation of gaming at that point in time with Black Ops 2 is the greatest of all time, and this was why.